Okay, so let's start with the subject of your tie.
My tie.
You have been on a quest to break the state of California into 6 separate states, and it was supposed to be on the ballot this year, but there's a little postponement, right? So what's going on?
All of that's a little bit off, but
okay.
Generally, yes. This will create 6 new Californias, and by creating 6 new states, we will have the opportunity to have those states all be in competition for us. So we will get to choose the state that is right for us. And then those states will have to perform. I mean, these are very nice chairs, right? If they were made by our government, we would not be nearly as comfortable. And that's because it's a monopoly.
49 other states already. There's 50.
Sure, except if you want this weather, and then you kind of want to be here. And people are choosing, and they are leaving. And Tesla decided that they'd move their battery factory to Nevada. Sony and Disney both moved 2,500 jobs to Louisiana because it was a better state to operate in. Mm-hmm. Occidental Petroleum moved their whole 8,000 jobs to Texas. People are leaving California because it is ranked 50th as the worst state to do business in. Now, 40 years ago, we were number 1. Mm-hmm. So 40 years ago, we were number 1 in education, in K-12 education. Today, we're 47th. Mm-hmm. 40 years ago, we were number 1 as the best place to do business in the entire nation, and now we're number 50. 40 years ago, we had 1/4 as many prisoners as we do today. So something's wrong. Mm-hmm. Something has to happen. And sure, okay, 6 Californias is an idea, but it's a good one because what it does is it allows us to refresh and allow those states. We'll get closer to our governments, we'll be more democratic, we'll be more interested in what our governments mm-hmm. do. It'll be much more efficient. I mean, imagine if you start from scratch, it's a whole different ballgame from having all the baggage of 100 years of governing.
But I mean, you're not technically, you've got to figure out water rights for the state, you've got to figure out how does the university system get separated.
Some things would stay the same. Some things would stay the same, and some deals would be made amongst the states, and that's state compacts. That happens all the time. In fact, a lot of our water comes from the Colorado River. A lot of people don't know that. Other parts of our water come from desalinization plants down in San Diego. So I don't think water would change right off the bat, but I think each of these states, one more thing, 40 years ago, we spent 26% of our budget on infrastructure, and today we spend 3% of our budget on infrastructure. So you wonder why we have water problems? We have huge infrastructure problems.
We passed 2 propositions, or there was Jerry Brown's proposition for water infrastructure this November. So I guess the question is why pick something with the 6 Californias plan? You basically have to go through U.S. Congress to get both sides of the legislature to decide that, hey, it's a great idea to add a bunch of new senators and U.S. representatives. And that seems like such a tall hurdle, given that we haven't done that in 6 years.
It might be against their interest as power mongers, but it is for their interest as representatives of our country. Our country will be better off with more competition. Mm-hmm. And by the way, governments all around the world, let's wake up, guys. Governments all around the world are in competition for us. For the great minds and the capital and the businesses of the world, they are competing.
Yeah, but despite all the examples
governments need to compete, and our government is not competing.
Despite all the examples
the California government's not competing.
That you gave, I mean, Y Combinator, the major VC firms, a lot of major, Apple, Google, Facebook, all of these major companies are still choosing here. I mean, you gave a few examples of a few companies leaving and taking several thousand jobs elsewhere.
They're starting here because the money is here.
Yeah.
They're leaving when they get bigger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but Google hasn't left. Google is acquiring space all over the entire region.
Yeah, just wait. When a CFO takes over Google, they're going to move.
But when a CEO takes over Google, like maybe
Right.
they're not going to
be a different
like,
game.
nimble or agile.
But that's what. But you know, as businesses get to be too big and too, you know, big behemoths, eventually somebody starts looking at the numbers and they say, gee, you know, if we did this in Texas, it would be a lot cheaper. Or if we did it in China. And by the way, Google, you say it's all here. That's not true. They have offices all over the world.
But their headquarters are here. So when you look at, since this panel is called Silicon
They started here.
Yeah.
When you start in a place, you don't really want to move. And that's the case with most Californians. They're living here. They don't really want to move. So sure, there will be people who stay, of course. But really, really bright people and really rich people and really good businesses are leaving. And shouldn't you be starting to panic if you're California and you're seeing all the wealth move, the brain drain, you're starting to see things happen like that? Yeah, I think you should be very concerned.
I'm not
I think
so sure I agree with that
sitting and living on your laurels on a government that was created that was really good 40 years ago is wrong-headed, because the world's moving fast. Things are changing. Moore's law is affecting all of us. We can all compete anywhere in the world. We can move across borders. We can start a business in Texas or in Beijing or in Shanghai or in Cupertino, wherever. It can be started anywhere, and it will spread all the way around the world. If any of you guys come up with a really great new app on the phone or a new wearable device or a new something, that will spread around the world faster than ever before, and it doesn't matter at all where your headquarters is. So you're in the Silicon Valley. This is great because you can get money here, and there's a lot of activity and a lot of great things going on, but you're also in the worst state to do business in the entire United States. And so that is a big issue. I also think that we, as geographic borders fall, we are all going to be much better. We can move.
Yeah. I'm just saying, from looking at the companies that I talk to, it's true that you can start a business, you can start a product from anywhere. But in general, what I feel that I'm seeing is growth stage companies are still locating in these major hubs of places like Silicon Valley or Beijing. And arguably you could say, like I'll see lifestyle businesses.
If you find me one business that started in Texas and built a good business and moved to California. Good luck with that.
Well, what about? You're just picking something that I can find some kind of random example of. Like I don't keep track of all the businesses that started in
Right, there aren't any.
But anyway, so when you think about today, like what are the biggest? When I think about the biggest startup hubs that are kind of most prominent in the world today, like Silicon Valley, Beijing, and then maybe you could look at like New York, Berlin, et cetera. What do you think? Who's well positioned for 30 years from now? Is it still going to be Beijing and Silicon Valley?
You know who's really well positioned for 30 years from now are the most competitive governments, and let me tell you who they are. Singapore, Korea, and Estonia. Singapore and Korea have both said, Bitcoin, sure, bring it on. The US said that about the internet. They said, bring it on, let's just see what happens. They didn't regulate it, and look at what happened. All these amazing companies were started here.
Yeah.
It was the best thing for the US. It was a huge economic boom. Yeah. US is now saying, hey, well, maybe we should regulate Bitcoin, or maybe we should. No, the idea should be you let Bitcoin run, and you're going to see the same kind of incredible growth and all the changes that happen in media and communications are now going to happen in finance and commerce, and those are bigger markets. So Singapore and Korea are both saying, sure, bring it on. Bitcoin, bring it on. Estonia, for a very different reason, is going to be a big winner.
You talking about the e-residency?
Yeah.
Do you want to explain what that is?
Okay, so the Estonian prime minister apparently lived in the Silicon Valley for about 8 years, and then he went back and he ran for president or prime minister. Anyway, he won, and he's the guy, and he's now He's now created an almost fully digital government. It is digital voting. It is digital identity. It is all digital signatures are legal. He has. We can all now become, and in fact, Steve Jurvetson and I are going to be the first two Estonian virtual residents. Now, if you wanted to set up a bank account in the EU, it would take you about 6 months. But if you go through Estonia, it's 24 hours. So they have figured out how to, take computers and have them replace, each computer replaces 500 bloated bureaucrats. And I think that could end up being the kind of government that we all have to, every government will have to compete with, is a very modern, technologically savvy, internet-based government. The internet's, hey, let's face it, internet is fairer, it is more consistent, it is, because there are people involved in all of the other decisions that are made. So the more you can lay on to the internet or whatever, the better off you're going to be. The other thing that's really fun is, if you guys haven't studied this blockchain technology, it is so worth digging into. It's what Bitcoin is based on. Contracts can be put in software and totally connected. So if I make a deal with you, if we bet on the outcome of the Warriors game, the outcome happens, and then the money goes to you if you win the bet. That kind of thing can change all sorts of industries, and it can change government. It can get people having those outcomes. All those outcomes can be taken care of through a lot of pieces of government. The other thing is, gosh, why are our medical records such a nightmare? That should all be in the cloud, simple, and we should be using wearables and big data to figure out how healthy we are.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you another question on Bitcoin, since from a year or two ago, a lot of the major Bitcoin wallets and merchant processing platforms like BitPay, Coinbase, Zappo, et cetera, and Circle have all raised these massive venture rounds. So these kind of basic infrastructure products are already really, really well funded. Where are the most interesting places to do seed investments in Bitcoin now?
That's a really good question, because Coinbase grabbed the wallet.
Yeah.
And Varum, which is now called Mirror, is grabbing all the financial instruments.
Yeah.
So those two have a real edge. I think that there are opportunities in bit shares where you can where you could set up a company just all through Bitcoin, and I'd fund your company, and then you'd make all the shareholders in a blockchain of shares rather than a blockchain of Bitcoin. I think that there are opportunities, and of course in remittance.
Is there a company that you've invested in that space?
Not yet.
Yeah, okay.
In remittance, of course, there are many. Bitpagos down in Argentina.
Yeah.
There are. What's great is we've actually funded companies in about 8 different countries that are the Coinbase for those countries. So, OKCoin in China, Coin Hako in Singapore. Both Corebit and CoinPlug in Korea. And then in Mexico, they changed their names. When they change their names, it throws me off. Anyway, we have decided that various countries are going to be very active with Bitcoin, and they will be big beneficiaries. The most open countries are, interestingly, the most open countries, and then the most corrupt societies are going to be the biggest beneficiaries of Bitcoin. The most open countries, because people will run their businesses through those countries. The most corrupt societies, because if you're I don't know how corrupt it is, but the Argentinian peso will almost guaranteed to drop 50% in value every single year. You'd much rather have Bitcoin, even if it's bouncing, price is bouncing up and down.
Sam Altman tweeted this. He was tweeting about bull cases and bear cases for Bitcoin. I think it was like a week ago, and he tweeted a bear case saying that like most of the people that he knows anecdotally, like they're still using Bitcoin as a sort of speculative investment instead of something that they're actually using for transactions day to day.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that's what I'm seeing too,
true.
And that's what I've been seeing for a year.
Right now, it's pretty much miners and speculators, but it's also entrepreneurs. So the miners and the speculators are hoarding it or whatever because they realize there's only a limited number. So they're doing really the right thing. It's going to be quite valuable if we all start using Bitcoin. And then you have all the entrepreneurs, and they're making it useful. We have a company called Atlas that allows you to swipe a card and pay in Bitcoin, and the retailer doesn't have to pay Visa, MasterCard, American Express. They're 2.5% to 4%. Retailers are going to be all over that.
But when's sort of the tipping point when it switches over from something that people are thinking, this might be a really valuable payment network in the future versus?
It's going to go through the same process as all industries do. I call it the IS. It comes up in a cursive I to a peak when the bubble sort of is hot and whatever.
We hit that already?
And we hit that. That was the $2,000 Bitcoin.
Yeah, that one.
Okay, then it comes back down, and then all of the engineering happens, and they make it easy for the rest of us to be able to use whatever it is, the industry, whatever it is. And then slowly, but nobody really notices, it comes back up, goes way past the I in the form of an S, where it finally flattens out years later. But we're maybe a year from the beginning of that S. And people are...
What's the sign to you that happens? What is the sort of behavior that you'd be looking for to suggest that it's on that?
It's usually when the taxi driver starts talking to you about his Bitcoin.
Has that happened?
The Uber driver.
Yeah.
Now it's the Uber driver. No, it hasn't happened yet. That'll be happening soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we are out of time.
Oh my God.
We're out of time. So I
come
can't
on,
ask
let's
you
keep this thing going.
I want to ask you like 50 more questions about 6 Californias. I'm happy to argue with it. But we're out of time. I want to thank you
Good.
so much.
Thank you.